Hello, everyone. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. I'm Silas, and I'm a product manager for Zoho Analytics. Here's the agenda for the webinar. We will get started with what is a hybrid workplace, followed by why should you adapt your service desk, and then we're going to talk about the 5 tips to adapt your service desk to the hybrid workplace. And finally, we'll wrap up the session with leveraging analytics to adapt to the hybrid workplace. All right, so what's a hybrid workplace? A hybrid workplace is where employees can choose to come to office or work from home based on their needs. They can choose to do both during the work week or be a primarily remote or office going employee. A hybrid workplace offers flexibility to the employees to choose their mode of work. A lot of companies are considering some form of the hybrid model with the pandemic slowing down in different parts of the world and people returning to their offices. During the pandemic, with everyone forced to work from home, employees and companies have realized the value of remote work. Companies can cut expenses by having fewer people work from the office, while employees that work from home cut down on commute and fuel expenses. They also get more time to spend with their families or pursue hobbies. However, a completely remote work model has its challenges as well. The blurring lines between work and home, the increased feeling of burnout and loneliness are the reasons that companies are considering mixing both remote work and in office work to create a hybrid model that works for them and their employees. According to Microsoft's 2021 Work Trend Index, around 66% of leaders say that their company is considering redesigning office space for hybrid work. With hybrid workplaces starting to become the norm, we need to understand how it affects IT service delivery and the service desk. All right, why should you adapt your service desk? The hybrid workplace poses unique challenges to IT teams. Trends that started much before the pandemic have been accelerated by it. Trends like the adoption of cloud infrastructure and securing a network using measures like zero trust will continue to gain momentum as IT departments get used to work in this new hybrid future. The hybrid workplace requires IT teams to juggle workers who work across nodes, geographies, and time zones. They have to ensure business is conducted smoothly, managing and empowering workers to do their jobs and secure the organization's virtual resources and assets from external attack. Keeping this rapidly evolving landscape in mind, here are 5 tips that you can use to get your service desk ready for the hybrid workplace. Number one, create inclusive IT practices for the hybrid workplace, followed by secure your organization with zero trust. The third one being prepare your infrastructure for increased cloud adoption, followed by shift your IT spends to align with hybrid workspace. And finally, continuously improve your service delivery. Now, let's get started with creating inclusive IT practices for the hybrid workspace. With the onset of the pandemic, the majority of office going population was restricted to working from home. While this was a boom to employees, IT teams were running raged to figure out how to smoothly transition a primary in office workforce to a primary remote workforce. One of the ways that IT teams performed the transition was to change the previously in person process into digital ones. For instance, with everyone working remotely, you couldn't walk up to your IT technician if any application isn't working right. The technician has to schedule a session with you where they take remote control of your device to fix your issues. Now, with the employees coming back to work, it is very tempting to let go of these digital processes in favor of the in person ones. However, IT teams must remember that not all employees are coming back. They're going to be fully remote employees, partially remote employees, and employees who come in daily. A truly hybrid workplace will offer flexibility for employees to switch between these modes as well. This means there is a need to adopt processes and practices that are inclusive of all these models of work. The IT team's prerogative is to maintain consistent high quality service for all employees across modes and geographies. Adapt existing IT practices into practices that are equally accessible to a fully remote employee and an employee who comes into the office daily. Here are three practices that can help you create a more inclusive hybrid workplace for your employees. Number one, reimagine IT asset provisioning and ownership in the hybrid workspace. Now, employees will need IT assets to get the job done. This is true regardless of your employee's work model. Considering the need for employees that can not come to office regularly and adopt practices like shipping physical assets to employees' homes or over the air deployment of software assets to employee devices. The first step in adopting an inclusive IT asset provisioning process is to have data on employees' location. Now, you got to run a survey among your employees using Service Desk Plus's survey module and understand the different work modules like fully remote, hybrid, or fully in office. Now, by doing that, you make sure you get their locations as well. So you can set up a shipping channel where most of your workers reside. You can use reports like this to get the results of your survey. Here you can see that most of the employees live in the state of California. This means we can set up shipping channels to California to cover most of them. We also have employees living in Texas. Let's drill down on this report to see where the employees live in the state of Texas. And you can see that they all live in Austin. All right, let's go back. Few people are living in states like Utah and Nevada. Since there are hardly any employees here, you can work out shipping plans on case-to-case basis with these outliers. Now, here's another report that shows the percentage of workers working remotely and the percentage of workers that are working out of office regularly for each city. This can help you plan your logistics as well. If most of your workers are coming into office, they can collect IT hardware all by themselves. The second aspect to it is preparing to support a wide range of infrastructure. Now, in hybrid workplaces, employees have increasingly started to use their own equipment to get work done, from network infrastructures like routers and switches and their own device peripherals like keyboards and mouse. The devices could range from cheaper utilitarian ones to expensive ones with the latest features based on what the employee has invested. While IT teams can issue guidelines on do's and don'ts for employees to follow when buying these new hardware equipments, you can't control the hardware that your employees will buy and use. The best way to ensure that your network security isn't compromised and your employees don't feel compelled to use these expensive devices is to understand the devices that your employees use and prepare to optimize your networks based on those devices. For that, you can run a survey to understand the different endpoints and devices that your employees use to connect to the network. Now, here's an interesting report that shows this data. Here you can see the different devices that your employees are using. I'm now going to drill down on routers by the vendor column. And this shows me the data on the different vendors from whom our employees are buying routers. Here we can see our employees are using routers like TP-Link, Netgear, and Linksys. You can use this information to optimize your security for these vendors. You can also potentially reach out to them to start a corporate relationship that could be beneficial for everyone involved. You can do this for other devices in this report as well. Well, switching gears to the third aspect of it is accommodating different work styles and conditions with flexible access to resources. Hybrid workers face unique challenges when they aren't working from office. Some may have kids that need attention or have ailing relatives that they need to take care of. That could be employees who prefer to work during certain times of the day and try to weave together their personal and professional lives and achieve their work life balance. It is in the best interest of the IT teams to enable flexible access to company resources and employees instead of restricting them by the time of the day. IT also needs to provide tech support for greater portions of the day. However, to do this with caution, as you will have to start constantly monitoring the network throughout the day to avoid unauthorized access and data breaches. Now, here's a report that shows the VPN access patterns of employees. While plenty of access occurs during business hours from 9 to 5, there's still a lot of access happening during the non business hours as well. A report like this can help you decide when to allow or restrict access to company resources. While employees may like the flexibility in access, the onus is on the IT teams to ensure this flexibility does not come at the cost of decreased security. Now, with that, we move to the second tip for the day, that's securing your organization with zero trust. Cybersecurity is one of the pivotal aspects of IT management. With the onset of pandemic, organizations have been facing an increasing number of security breaches and incidents. The FBI reported a 300% increase in cybersecurity incidents since the start of the pandemic in the US alone. A similar trend is observed across the world, and estimated 77% of organizations do not have a concrete incident response plan. Now, it was hard enough to secure the network when most of the workforces work from home, but now that we are moving towards a hybrid workplace with a part of the workforce working remotely and a part returning to office, it's even more challenging to secure the network from breaches fully. A reliable way to achieve good security would be to implement zero trust in your organization. Well, zero trust is a concept where organizations should not automatically trust anything inside or outside of their parameters. Instead, they must verify everything that tries to connect to their systems. Trust nothing, verify everything. Zero trust is implemented with a combination of multi factor authentication, IAM, encryption, analytics, and governance policies where users are given the least amount of access to accomplish any task. Organizations that employ zero trust are observed to be much more resilient to cyber crime and data breaches. With zero trust, you can allow single sign on, implement access control across policies, access proxy, perform user and device based authentication and authorization. Using analytics, you can assign vulnerability score to your assets and employ stricter modes of authentication for assets that are deemed vulnerable. You can do this using the asset vulnerability score. It's a measure of how vulnerable an asset is to the internal and external threats. Now, let's say, for example, an iPhone is non-compliant with password policies and has prohibited app installs in it. Now, this means it has two vulnerabilities. So, its asset vulnerability score is 2. Let's say there's another device, a Windows laptop, that is missing about 7 critical security patches. It is using outdated software and is also lacking encryption. Then it has 11 vulnerabilities. So its asset vulnerability score would be 11. This means that the laptop is at a greater risk of exposure to threats. It's more exploitable. So the laptop needs to be secure first. The asset vulnerability can be customized to give greater score to certain critical vulnerabilities. For example, if your organization wants to attach a higher weightage to missing security patches and lesser weightage to prohibiting software installation, you can set up such variations using analytics. Now, here's how you can visualize the asset vulnerability score. All right, this report gives you the vulnerability score of various assets in use. Let's set the ownership filter to corporate and set the location to Austin. You can see that in Austin, Texas, among the corporate owned devices, there is an iPhone which an asset vulnerability score is 19. Naturally, the bigger the bubble, the bigger is the particular device's vulnerability score. This means that device is highly vulnerable and exploitable and that it needs to be secured immediately. Hover on top of the bubble to view more details. You can also filter out results for corporate or personal devices using the user filter at the top of the report. You can use the location filter to see vulnerable assets in other locations as well. All right, the purpose of this report is to qualify the vulnerability of assets in an organization. This can help IT teams prioritize assets that are more vulnerable and remedy them first. Besides assigning vulnerability score to assess the assets, you can assign high risk score for your users as well. Because any network is only as secure as people accessing and using it, around 20% of the security breaches have been found to have caused by remote workers. Now, here's an example of how you can assign risk value for your employees. For example, a sales executive who constantly travels for work will connect to many wireless networks in places like airports and coffee shops. These networks may be vulnerable, and this leaves the executive's device prone to attack. Employees like this can be marked as high risk. Another example would be C suite employees who have access to highly sensitive and confidential data. A breach in their devices could be disastrous for the organization. They can also be marked as high risk. Classifying your workforce into risk levels will ensure that the highest level of security are applied to the parts of the workforce that has the highest risk associated with them. This also helps you enforce strict access controls whenever it's possible. This ensures that even in the event of a breach, the data breach is minimal. All right, here's another report that shows the segmentation of workforce by the assigned risk. Well, let's sort the report by x-axis descending. These are individuals with the highest risk values in your organization. You can hover over the bubble to learn more about them. You can also apply filters in this report by location to understand the risk assigned to individuals across locations. All right, let's step into the third tip for the day. That's about preparing your infrastructure for increased cloud adoption. Cloud adoption has always been on the rise. 3 years before the pandemic, organizations were moving to the cloud at the rate of 28 to 34%, according to a McKinsey survey. In the past year, this has rocketed to 55%. And it's not just in America. This rapid adoption has been consistent across APAC, Europe, and other regions. While traditional IT had most of the applications and tools hosted on premise, the new cloud centric move has on premise servers based applications moving to cloud infrastructure. The responsibility of hardware management goes to the cloud vendor. This makes infrastructure as a service and software as a service a major component of delivering of IT services. This does not anyways mean that the cloud will make IT departments obsolete. It'll just introduce new and interesting challenges to the help desk. Some of those include say a shift in the IT workload. IT teams are seeing a shift in the IT workload and maintaining in-house hardware and related equipment to a more cloud-focused workload. They are asked to set up and maintain workflows and cloud applications, secure and manage company data, and act as a cloud facilitator to ensure operations are running smooth. This shift gets more apparent with better cloud adoption. Now, here's a report that shows this shift. Now, let's filter out all the categories but hardware and cloud management and see how they measure up. As you can see, the workload that is hardware related has significantly gone down over time, and workload related to cloud management has gone up. As cloud adoption goes up, you will see this trend picking up. The second one would be new variety of IT requests. With cloud adoption on the rise, there is a shift in the type of requests that IT teams will receive. For example, they will receive fewer and fewer requests to troubleshoot installed applications on user machines. Instead, they will be focusing on configuring and managing organization accounts of business applications. This is why we see a lot of more changes or change management and configuration management requests come to the help desk. Having visibility into the type of request that comes to the help desk will help leaders plan resource management better and equip IT teams with necessary tools. This report shows the phenomenon that we are just talking about. Well, as you can see, the percentage of change management and access management and configuration requests is much higher than traditional requests like incidents. Okay, let's jump back to point number three, that's changing the focus of KPIs. In traditional IT, critical KPIs for the help desk used to be SLAs, response time, resolution time. But now the focus is on ensuring a smooth transition to the cloud with minimal disruption to the business. For this, you can track infrastructure KPIs like CPU utilization, memory utilization, and disk utilization. On top of that, you can also track application metrics like availability, response time, and latency. These metrics should give you a fair idea of your user's experience. By measuring and tracking these metrics, you can start improving your services. First, let's take a look at the infrastructure KPIs. Here's an example, or here's the CPU utilization, memory utilization, and disk utilization visually analyzed. An increase in all the three metrics indicates that your cloud infrastructure is under a high load. It's a good practice to investigate if there is any unexpected higher utilization of CPU, disk, or memory. By tracking these KPIs, you can understand your cloud usage better and plan for the future. Here's another report that shows your availability. The availability metric shows the amount of time that your cloud services were available for the use. This needs to be as high as possible to ensure there's no business disruption. Here's a report that shows your application response time. If you have a high response time, your application will feel sluggish to use. You can also configure a threshold for this report. Set the average response time as a threshold like I have done here. So you can see if the current response time is more or less than the average response time. Now this is a report that shows your network latency. Latency is the delay between your action and web application's response to the action. It can also be called the total round trip time. If latency increases, the application's performance will suffer. Keeping track of the latency will ensure your business users get the best application performance at any point of time. A modern IT help desk manager's dashboard should look something like this. This dashboard tracks all your KPIs and reports that we discussed. Keeping all of these metrics and reports in one place helps you to stay on the top always. All right, so with the rapid movement to the cloud, IT service teams are now in a position to support business users who are running services on hardware that the corporate IT team doesn't have any control over. But with a reduction in workload from no longer having to support typical incidents, IT teams can finally do the cap of cloud service enablers. All right, the next tip for the day is about shifting your IT spending to align with hybrid workplaces. The impact of the move to the cloud is not just the type of requests raised by teams, but also on IT spending. As an organization moves from hosting applications on premise to the cloud, there is a marked reduction in hardware expenses. Most organizations find that having a cloud based IT infrastructure reduces IT spending. This shift is in spending can be seen in the following report. You can see that there is a marked decrease in hardware related spending, and we are seeing software related expenses and cloud infrastructure costs go up. As cloud adoption in your organization increases, you will see these trends picking up. Another benefit from the movement to the cloud is that basic requests, which tend to form the majority of requests, are now hived off to cloud vendors or business vendors. I mean, business application vendors. This allows IT teams to run highly specialized team that no longer needs to field basic requests. This has the potential to cut down IT spending significantly. As IT teams are becoming more specialized, they have the time and the ability to solve complex problems that require a specialist's touch. Problems that have become part of the employees' lives will now be resolved. IT teams now have the time to tweak and improve existing processes and tackle complex issues faced by the workforce. Specialized IT teams contribute to improvement in the organization's productivity and efficiency. This, along with the increasing adoption of cloud automation, no code platforms, and remote monitoring, improves employees' productivity significantly. Here are a couple of reports that show this. This report tracks the cost of labor against revenue. As you can see, the cost of labor is decreasing with time while revenue is increasing. I'm using a combo chart here to track these two metrics together. Now, in addition to comparing labor cost against revenue, let's take a closer look at labor cost against throughput. Here I'm measuring throughput as the revenue earned per employee. Again, we see a similar trend where the cost of labor is decreasing with time and revenue per employee is growing. All right, so with that, we wrap up point number 4, and then we are now jumping to tip number 5, and that's about continuously improving your service delivery. While IT teams strive to adopt to hybrid workplaces, it's important to remember that even though the mode of work has changed, the value and impact IT teams have on businesses are still the same, and it's getting bigger. The business objectives haven't changed either. It's vital for IT teams to ensure that their service delivery is continuously improving despite the changes in work environment. A good way to do that is by measuring IT metrics that have high business impact and comparing their pre pandemic and current levels. Here are some metrics that you can measure. These are SLAs, backlogs, customer satisfaction or CSAT, and the trend of major incidents. Well, here are some reports that show these metrics. So this chart that you see on the screen shows you the current and pre-pandemic SLA compliance levels. As you can see, the SLA compliance has slipped in the months since the pandemic hit, and there's something that we should work to improve. Uh, the next report shows the current and pre-pandemic backlog levels. We can see a slight increase in the current backlog levels compared to the pre-pandemic data. This is also an area where we must improve. The next report is on CSAT or customer satisfaction for help desk. We can see that the current CSAT scores have gone down during June and July, but have picked up since then. This is a positive trend, and we need to keep this momentum going. The next report is shows the major incidents that were raised in to the service desk teams. As you can see, there aren't any significant increase or decrease in the major incident count. This is also a metric that we can take up for improvement as a part of our continuous improvement efforts. Now, besides tracking these metrics separately, you can also add them into a single continuous improvement dashboard to keep track of them in one place. And here's a continuous improvement dashboard created with these reports that you just saw now. You can modify this dashboard to fit your organization's need and use it as well. All right, so as you adapt to hybrid workplaces, here are some techniques that you can use to improve your service delivery. Implement robust project management to ensure outcomes. Project management is an integral part of service desk, more so in a hybrid workplace. Ensure you set up a simple yet robust project management system that works for you and your team. This will help you track important tasks and stay on top of the work that needs to be done. A robust project management system will keep all your team members in the loop, telling them what their individual and collective responsibilities are and their progress in completing their tasks. This will also give you a bird's eye view of the service desk. A project management system goes hand in hand with IT success in a hybrid environment. Service Desk Plus offers a comprehensive project management module that you can leverage on. You can also automate your processes to free up your technicians. That has become the norm to fear automation and its capabilities of moving work from people to machines. While some of the fears are warranted, automation can be leveraged to take over mundane, repetitive tasks and free up your technicians to use their skills to solve complex problems. Find tasks in your service delivery process that are repetitive, require little or no attention to perform, and need to be done in a regular way and try to automate them. As you continuously automate these tasks, encourage your technicians to use the extra time on their hands to tackle long term complex problems with your help desk. Now, they will also appreciate the opportunity to apply their skills to a meaningful problem, and you will boost productivity and solve complex business problems along the way. The third one would be to set up detailed documentation to improve your self service. In any self service help desk system, the technicians will be running operations across multiple time zones and geographies. The hybrid model has added more variables into the mix by adding multiple work modes as well. All these add to the technician's workload. A way to elevate their workload would be to document issues and their solutions extensively and make it available in a knowledge base accessible to your workspace. I mean, the workforce. This cuts down technicians' effort in having to resolve issues that have occurred before, and those have documented solutions. As a workforce learns to use the knowledge base more, they will develop the habit of looking up solutions for their issues even before raising any requests. Over time, this will decrease the requests that the service desk receives, and your technicians will start focusing more on critical and complex requests and let your workforce solve the basic issues themselves. With that, we have come to the end of what I talked about today. Now, let's quickly summarize we have what we have seen and how you should. The first one was about creating inclusive IT practices for the hybrid workspace, followed by securing your organizations with zero trust. Then came preparing your infrastructure to move to the cloud. The last but one was about shifting your IT spends to align with your hybrid mode of work. And finally, it's about continuously improving your service delivery. Well, the reports and dashboards that I've showed you today were built using Zoho Analytics, Zoho's BI solution. Zoho Analytics integrates out of the box with Service Desk Plus and other wide range of business applications like ServiceNow, Jira, and Zendesk. Also, databases hosted over your cloud and on premise if you have any custom apps hosted internally. If you have an application that isn't on its list, let me know in the chat and we'll reach out to you and help you set up the integration with APIs. Well, with Zoho Analytics, you can get access to over 100 plus out of the box reports and dashboards with Service Desk Plus integration. You can also access the AI enabled analytics for your help desk systems. You get access to historic and predictive data analysis that helps you to analyze your data in a much better way. Data blending feature is a hallmark feature that enables you to blend your data from multiple sources and have a 360-degree view of your business. And finally, advanced sharing and collaboration features helps you to collaborate among your teams. Now, if you're interested in trying Zoho Analytics, you can get a free 15-day trial. You can just scan the QR code on the screen to download and install the application. All right, people. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for joining us in this session. I hope you found the session useful. If you have any other queries or if you're interested in learning more about how advanced analytics can help your IT teams, write to me at the email ID that you see here on the screen. Once again, thank you very much for sticking along. Have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.